Thanks a bunch for tuning in to tonight's episode of the MMA Podcast, the first episode of 2013. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We got a bunch to break down tonight. UFC 155, the last card of 2012. That was this past Saturday. A bunch to talk about from that card. We have a new heavyweight champion in Cain Velasquez, who took his belt back from Junior Dos Santos. We also had a war between Jim Miller and Joe Lauzon we want to talk about, and a week's worth of MMA news. Like every week, we also have Conor Heun, who's been in the news recently, so we're actually calling him up in about 3 or 4 minutes. Definitely want to chat with him about what's been going down. So, without any further ado, let's do it. Thanks a bunch for tuning in. And like I said, it's the first podcast of 2013. Happy 2013. Hope everyone had a happy new year, a safe new year. You have a good New Year's Eve, Chris?
I had a fantastic New Year's Eve. It was my buddy Andrew's 21st birthday, so we did it up in style.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, huge shout out to our listeners. Shout out to Conor Heun, who, like I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be calling up in 2 or 3 minutes to chat with. Shout out to MMA Mental. Shout out to Word on the Street podcast. Both Ray and Patrick always doing it big over there. Big interviews, and they're looking to expand this year. Really looking forward to seeing what they have to offer. Word on the Street podcast. We actually, Chris and I were both on the New Year's Day Word on the Street podcast. That was a lot of fun doing that with Ramses. So you can follow MMA Mental on Twitter at MMA Mental, Ramses at The Ant Jimmy Show. And if you'd like to call in, we're not taking any calls this second because we're having Conor Heun on in just a matter of seconds. But our call-in number is 213-457-3380, as it is every week. You can tweet us any comments at the MMA Podcast. Listen to us every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Eastern, 6 to 8 Pacific on Ustream. We tweet that link out a whole bunch while we're live. Visit themapodcast.com, and we do a roundtable show with the other two aforementioned podcasts and our buddy Buffalo Dave. Chat MMA around the roundtable. That's tomorrow, every Thursday, from 7 to 9 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific. Just a minute or two to chat before we call up Mr. Heun, who I think I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm horrible at pronunciations though, so just by probabilities, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But really quick, what'd you think of that UFC 155 card? That was really, it had very extreme ups and downs. The ups were amazing, the downs were snoozers.
Yeah, man, It was the...
You there, Chris?
Top 3 first 2 fights of the evening really just did not live up to the hype at all. But the other 3 fights were fantastic. So I thought
you're cutting in and out there. I'm not really
pretty.
Chris, you're cutting in and out. Maybe check your connection. I'm not sure if it's on your end or my end. We'll try and figure that out as we go, I guess. Turn down the fan that I just realized was going right next to me. But I guess without any further ado, I'll get Mr. Heun on the line. Let me get this over here. This is always the, I'm getting messages that it sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel. Should be a lot better now. I didn't realize that I had wind coming my direction. I'm not sure what's going on with the call with Chris. Chris just dropped out as I'm trying to call up Conor. You there, Chris?
I'm here, man. You sound fine, look fine.
Yeah.
It's just same problem with the connection, but it's looking good as of the moment.
That's odd. All right, let's call up Mr. Heun and see if we can get him on the horn. All right. Should be ringing in a second here. Not sure why. Chris, are you still with us?
I am.
All right, cool. I think it just connected. Connor, are you there?
Yep.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Let's get right to it. I guess I definitely want to touch on your MMA career and how that got started up. But first, let's start off with the issue that's been around the news recently. You obviously know the issue better than we do. So, would you sort of chronicle this story about your injury and trouble with Zuffa's insurance company for our listeners who haven't really been aware of what's been going on with you?
Basically, just after my fight with Ryan Couture, I tore the labrums in both my hips and had what's called an avulsion fracture, where basically my hip flexor was either overstressed or too tight or over-engaged or something like that. And so probably when throwing a kick, it pulled off a piece of my pelvis, like where the hip flexor attaches to the pelvis, pulled off a chunk of the bone. So, following the fight, I needed to go in and get some, get it all taken care of. And basically, the doctor went in and repaired both the labrums and repaired the fracture. But what he also did was called para-acetibular osteotomy. Looking at my pelvis, he saw that on the right side there was a congenital, which means a condition that I was born with, condition that called hip dysplasia. A lot of people are familiar with it in animals and dogs. I had a Rottweiler that had it. I didn't know that I had it until after the fight when I was trying to get my labrum repaired. And basically the doctor looked at everything and he said, look, if you're going to continue to throw 500 kicks a day on a heavy bag and play rubber guard and fight for a living, you're probably a little predisposed to tearing the labrum on the right side just due to the shape of your pelvis and the way the femur interacts with that pelvis. And basically, the labrum is a piece of tissue, sort of like a ring around that socket that helps keep the synovial fluid and in the joint, helps lubricate the joint and helps keep everything moving correctly. So rather than just going in and stitching up the labrum where it was torn, he said that, if I'm going to continue to throw as many kicks a day as I need to be, a professional fighter with that leg, that he wanted to adjust the shape of the pelvis so that when I'm throwing those kicks or, in a compromised position or a maximal range of motion, that I wasn't going to have any interference with the femur possibly tearing the labrum again, sort of being stretched past that end range of motion. So he wanted to go in and basically make sure that he wasn't doing this surgery again after my next fight. And, unfortunately, I guess the way the insurance company works, that's considered, a preventative surgery or an elective surgery or something to address a pre-existing condition rather than to address specific trauma from the fight. So because of that, we've run into a bunch of problems with them, covering it. Thankfully, Zuffa has been awesome. They stepped up. They covered, last time I spoke to them, they had already covered $198,000. Or were planning to. I'm not sure if they have already paid that, but they basically said, hey, we're gonna step up and cover this for you. So that was a huge blessing. But unfortunately, they told me that they weren't going to be able to cover the third surgery. So basically, August 3rd, they went in. The doctor went in. He repaired the labrum on the right side, and basically got me set up to go back in 10 days later, or 12 days later on the 15th. Maybe it was the 13th, I don't know. But went back in on that same right side on the, 2 weeks later, 10 days later, went in and did the PAO, which is the sort of the preventative surgery, to ensure that the labrum wouldn't be torn again with continued martial arts competition. Then I had to rehab that for 3 months. Following that surgery kind of got pretty intense. It took much longer in the operating room than they had expected because of the density of my bones. The doctor said that in over 2,600 operations that he'd done, he'd never encountered bones as hard as mine. And so he had a real hard time cutting through the pelvis to adjust the shape. And that's the sort of problem with my bone density reared its head. This last surgery, too, the screw they were putting in to repair the avulsion fracture snapped off, and they had to go in and dig around for it for another hour and a half. So in the first surgery, it ended up going several hours long. I was in there. I was under for almost 7 hours. I ended up losing half the blood in my body during the procedure. I needed a blood transfusion. I was in the hospital for 8 days following that second procedure back in August. And then went home, crutches. I was, bedridden for probably another, 2 weeks maybe, something like that. Then I started getting up and around on the crutches and down to physical therapy. And basically put in 3 months of hard work to get that right side ready to where it could be weight bearing, so that they could go in and scope the left side and repair the fracture. And they wanted to do that, so they didn't want to do both of the operations on the bilaterally. They didn't want to do that at the same time because then I would have had to be in a wheelchair for 6 weeks, and no wheelchair ramp at my parents' house, and that would have made things pretty difficult. But so after the rehab, I was 2 days out from the final surgery where they were going to go in. They were going to remove screws that they had used on the right side to secure that PAO. That's a paratibular osteotomy. And then remove those screws, and then they were going to go in on the left side to repair the labrum and repair the fracture. But I basically got a phone call from Zuffa saying, what's this surgery? He thought you already had a couple surgeries. And I said, yeah, I had a long process to repair all the damage from that fight. But and they said, well, shoot, the insurance company, it looks like they're going to deny that first claim. So we're already prepared to cover that. We're going to pay $198,000 out of pocket, but we can't pay for anything more than that. It already looks like we're going to be paying out of pocket. But unfortunately, I wasn't in a situation where I could say, okay, that's fine. Leave this metal in over on the other side and leave it so that I can't do anything with my left leg. So I went, knowing full well that that Zuffa may not be covering it. I went ahead and had them, finish the surgery on the right side, remove those screws, and get that side good to go. And then they went in, like I said, put a screw in on the left side and repaired that. The rub of it is that, we're still sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. I actually spoke to someone at Zuffa today, just trying to, sort through everything and find out what's going on. It looks like the final surgery, I thought for some reason it was $40,000 because those are the bills that I had in my house. They told me that it's $120,000, that they had, that the hospital had billed their insurance company for $120,000, so it's looking at over $300,000 for all these surgeries right now. Luckily, my doctor is he's awesome, and he said, "Hey, I want to get you back. I'm not trying to do half the surgeries. I won't charge you anything for my services." And I spoke with him today. So $20,000 of that $120,000 is the doctor's bill, and he told me today that he doesn't have any control over the insurance company sending that out for billing. They use a billing company, but that when that insurance company comes back to him and says, this hasn't been paid, you want to send it to collections, he's going to say, no, waive that fee. So the final surgery, really, after he waives his fee, is going to be about $100,000. But I spoke with Zuffa today, and they're trying to pull some strings behind the scenes, and like I said, they've been really, really great to me. And they've got another peer-to-peer call where the insurance company's doctor is going to speak with my doctor on the 10th, sometime next week. And so, keeping my fingers crossed, hoping that, my doctor can convince them, look, we're going to be, all I did was repair the damage from the fight and ensure that repair stuck. It was like, I didn't want to go in and put a Band-Aid over it. I wanted to go in and fix it. And so we're working with the insurance company, and obviously, my doctor's going to bat for me, trying to get that all cleared away and let them know that it wasn't really an elective surgery at all. But to repair the damage and the damage, caused by the acts of that one individual fight, but also to prevent further damage in a career as a mixed martial artist.
Definitely, yeah. It sounded like that surgery was more of something that needed to be done to make sure it didn't get worse, rather than just sit back and get it later when things could compound, and it would be a much more serious surgery at that point. Also, really quickly, your volume, it's getting loud and then super quiet. I don't know if if it's nothing fixable. It's fine. It's definitely tolerable. Just wanted to make you aware of that. But yeah, I had a bunch of follow-up questions about the surgery, but you actually went really in depth and covered everything I had. It sounds like you're. I wasn't really sure if you and Zuffa were whether you were upset with Zuffa or cool with Zuffa, but it sounds like you're definitely praising them for doing everything they can.
Yeah, I'm stoked on Zuffa. I mean, before Zuffa owned Strikeforce, I fought George Gurgel and had my ACL, needed my ACL repaired after that fight. And, they had coverage. There was no problem. Okay, go get your ACL repaired. But I went into the doctor, said, no, I have insurance. It's covered. I, happened in a fight. And, then the insurance only covered $50,000 of the surgery. And as I'm figuring out very quickly that these surgeries are amazingly expensive, the cost of renting the operating room just for the hour or two that it took to do the ACL, which is a much more common and much simpler surgery than the PAO. Just the operating room rental in LA for that surgery was $48,000. So
wow.
It was leading up to my fight with KJ Nunes. I got notice from Washington that I was still under medical suspension up there from the Gurgel fight, and they needed a note from the doctor to clear me saying that I was good to go. So I called the doctor up and I said, hey, this is Conor Heun. You operated on me about a year ago. I need a letter for the athletic commission saying that I'm cleared. The doctor said, well, I'd be happy to write you that letter, but we've got an issue of $22,000 for my fees that haven't been paid. And as soon as you write me a check for $22,000, I'll be able to cover that, to write you a letter. And I was like, oh, geez. So turns out the insurance only covered $50,000. The operating room was $48,000. The doctor, I guess, billed later. It was all about who billed first. I had an acupuncturist, I guess, who got paid, but a physical therapist didn't get paid. The doctor didn't get paid. And I ended up claiming bankruptcy to get out from underneath the medical debt. And then, of course, I was out of work for a year, doing the rehab. And at least the first 2 or 3 months of that, I couldn't train clients. I wasn't coaching at the gym because I was on crutches. I was on non-weight bearing following that ACL surgery for 7 weeks. So the whole medical thing through my fight career has certainly been a learning experience.
Definitely, yeah, and that kind of takes me to my next question, which was how did you come up with the idea to start a page on funtofighter.com?
A woman in the sport who has been a supporter of mine and a friend of mine for a long time is Stephanie Daniels over at Tap Out Radio. She goes by Crooklyn. And she actually reached out to me to make me aware of the guys at Fun to Fighter and sort of clue me into what they were doing. And, I really struggled with the issue or, the idea of doing that page. As a fighter, I'm an individual, and all the sports I've ever done throughout my life have been individual sports. I was a cross-country runner, a diver, a wrestler, all these things, where you sort of make your own breaks and your hard work determines the outcome. Because of that, I've never really been one to rely on other people. It's not like I'm a running back and so I'm used to asking guys to block for me. I'm used to doing everything on my own. So the idea of me trying to, to humbly admit, okay, I'm broken, I'm out of work, and I'm out of money, I need some help to really humble myself and allow them at Fund a Fighter to create that page and sort of create that interface for me to reach out to the supporters in the MMA community and ask for help. That was really something that I struggled with for several weeks. And then, I sort of had just really had to swallow my pride and say, hey, this is a service that these guys are providing. And hold on just a minute here. Sorry about that. I had a call on the other one. To humble myself and to really say, okay, I'm going to reach out, and it has been tremendously rewarding. When I reached out to my friends who own gyms to offer some of the rewards on that site for those who choose to contribute to the campaign, that was challenging, but the response was overwhelming. I had all my friends say, anything I can do. Adam Hunter I called to ask if he could give me 2 tickets to one of his comedy shows to offer up as a prize for somebody who made a contribution. And he said, I'll do more than that. I want to throw in a benefit show for you. And I called and asked the people at 10th Planet Burbank. I said, hey, do you think you guys could put up a 1-month membership for somebody who makes a contribution to the campaign? And I said, we'll give you 10. And it had just been like that really across the board, reaching out to sponsors, Heroes and Demons, those guys sent me t-shirts, Rev Gears, going to be sending me some packages. The guys at Doc Sasara sent me some great bags that you can win. So when I reached out, I sent some emails out, and the response was just overwhelming, really almost brought tears in my eyes. Just being overwhelmed with gratitude for the love and compassion that people really showed. So, that was that sort of initial humbling myself to reach out to my friends and family, and then to really reach out to the community through that page and say, hey, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I haven't worked even since the fight. I had a desk job in LA actually right after the fight because I knew I wasn't going to be able to fight for a while. And unfortunately, the gym where I lived and worked closed down. So lost my housing in LA shortly thereafter, and really just had a crazy summer with all sorts of challenges being thrown at me. But in the end, what it caused me to do is to humble myself and to reach out. And the lessons that I've learned and sort of the faith in humanity that I've gained from doing that has been tremendous. And, if nothing else comes of this, and if I don't raise any more money than the money that's already on that account, and Zuffa chooses to, or not Zuffa, excuse me, Chartis or whoever their insurance company is, decides to deny the claim, just the lessons that I've learned from humbly asking for help and seeing how willing people are to reach out and support you in your time of need, that to me would be, a lesson, that's worth taking away from this. It's not a lesson that I would have chose for myself, but the universe doesn't ever give us what we ask for. It gives us what we need, and I'm blessed to be getting what I need.
Certainly, yeah. It was really cool. The page is fundafighters.com/fighters/Conor-Heun, and that's CONOR-Heun. If you Google search Conor Heun Fund a Fighter, it'll probably come up as well. I was looking at it. Yeah, you have a ton of stuff there for people to win. From grappling sessions at 10th Planet to just bunches and bunches of stuff there. I was actually looking at it earlier this evening and threw $10 in the pot, and I noticed your biggest sponsor so far is mixed martial artist and wife of Anthony Bourdain, Octavia Bourdain, who threw in $500. Do you know the Bourdains personally, or how did that come about?
No, I've never met them. I know she's a martial artist and a fighter in her own right. And no, I'm just that's one of the things I've just been really humbled and amazed by people who I don't know, people who I've never met, reaching out, and even just the people who retweeted on Facebook or on Twitter, or who share the link on Facebook. The people who say, hey, I can't give anything right now, I'm broke too, but I retweeted it and your fights inspire me, and that's, that makes a big difference too, just knowing that all those times I got out there and threw down, that it had a positive effect on somebody, that it motivated somebody to do something, and having these opportunities to be able to speak on the radio and sort of get my message out to other people. That's one of the things that I liked most about fighting, is that leading up to my fights, there was an increased media presence, and people wanted to know what I thought and what I was doing, and that was a little way for me to sort of try and spread some of my positivity and bring some of my knowledge and pass on the things that I've learned throughout my travels, and get that message out to other people. Not to give up, to pursue your dreams, to live heart first. Those type of things, and just having the opportunity that fighting provided me to get that message out. Because for me, going out and beating somebody's ass, that is what it is. It's I don't really take joy in that anymore. That was something that served me when I was a lot younger. But to be able to inspire people and to be able to encourage other people to chase their dreams, that's really what it's about right now.
Yeah, it's a really cool story, especially in recent times where a lot of people have been questioning a lot of the traits in humanity. This is a really inspiring, cool story. The website, one more time, is funtofighter.com/fighters/Conor-Heun. The links on both our Twitter and Conor's Twitter feed as well. Let's get back to your mixed martial arts career. You actually mentioned your mentality back when you were younger. You came up as a scrappy kid in Boulder, Colorado. Lots of brawls around town. I was actually reading a story, and one in particular stood out involving your father and a cash register. Would you mind retelling that story for our listeners?
No, I wouldn't. And the original story, they've got a little mixed up, so I'm happy to retell it. Basically, it was following a wrestling match. I coached wrestling here in Boulder at Fairview High School. My dad was a head coach there for something like 30 years, and he had just recently retired. The head coach at the time was a guy named Brian Young. But so we went out for a coaches meeting after a dual meet. It was probably a Thursday night, and went out and got some dinner with all of the coaches. It was me, my high school training partner and best friend Tim Shirley, who's actually, if you guys follow the jiu-jitsu scene, he's doing big things as a brown belt. He's training out in Pennsylvania right now under Daniel Elza, I believe is his last name, but he's a Mauricio Zingano guy originally. A very, very tough individual, my best friend. So it was him and I. We were the two assistants, and DY, that's Brian Young, was the head coach, and D-Ron, and my father, and I think there was one more guy there with us, Isaac. So it was like 6 of us, and we went out and got some food, and we went out to a nightclub at that time that was called The Foundry, downtown on the Pearl Street Mall. And my buddy Tim actually worked there as a bouncer. And so he was ordering beers at one section of the bar, and BY was ordering drinks at the other section of the bar, and sort of looked up and saw that Tim had already got around for all of us. And so BY stepped, the bartender's back was towards him, making drinks or pouring beers or something. So BY actually stepped around the bar to tap the bartender on the shoulder to say, hey, no, don't make those drinks. We don't want to waste them. We already got them. And when he stepped around the corner, 2 security guards blasted him from the side and tackled him into the side.
Whoa!
to touch the bartender. And so they get stood up or whatever. They sort of come out and they're like sort of squared off, and no punches have been thrown. Everybody's sort of, just jawing each other, I guess, like trying to explain things. And Tim, who worked there, was running towards us from across the way. And I guess a bouncer saw, one of the bouncers who worked there saw him running and thought things were about to go down. But I was facing my dad. The bouncers were talking to me while nothing really had happened other than the sort of initial tackle. But, everything was fine. And I had a bouncer run up. I was facing my father, and he came from behind my father and threw a hook and cheap shot him, from behind, threw a hook and smashed him in the jaw. And, my dad, he's a real tough guy. But he's also, he's retired. He's got a gray hair, gray beard. He's an old man. And so that guy hit my pops, and I lost it. I blasted him. Everything sort of flew off the handle. We were right next to the bar, and it actually wasn't a cash register. It was just a point of sale, like the touch screen. But I smashed the computer screen on the bouncer's head, and the guys were playing pool, started swinging pool sticks, and one thing led to another. But we all sort of made it out. We got sort of funneled out the back door into the alley. And everybody was out in the alley sort of checking their jaws, making sure nothing was broken, checking for injuries. And everybody was good. And my dad said, you know what, as we started to walk down the alley to get out of there, he said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. And he said, all right, what's the good news? He said, the good news is that's the most fun I've had in 35 years. The bad news is we should
Wow,
that's awesome. The next bar, and he tossed straws, and we continued the coaches' meeting, and that's about it. Tim got fired. He no longer worked security there. They cut him when he came into work the next day, and we had some beef with those guys for a while. Actually, the head bouncer at the time was Elliot Marshall, who's from the UFC. But he was actually cornering a fighter up in Washington when I fought Gurgel. So I ran into him then. That was the first time I'd seen him actually since the incident. And he wasn't working that night either. But I was able to sort of, squash some things with him. And, I saw him just the other night at Dwayne Ludwig's going away party. So, I'm cool with that. Tim's got a great job. He didn't need a job bouncing. And, my dad's got a clean pair of drawers on now. So I got it worked out for the best.
Wow, that's pretty funny. Yeah, you said back in Boulder you did a bunch of individual sports, cross country, diving, wrestling. What sort of led you into mixed martial arts?
Well, I've been a wrestler since I was 5, and I love wrestling. I wrestled all through college, and moved out to LA chasing a girl. And got, I had a business here in Colorado. I sold a t-shirt company that I had called Boulder Wear. We just did silk screens for like the police department and the athletic teams, the schools, softball, different things like that. And had like a little online retail thing as well for our own designs. But I sold all that, moved out to LA, and got a desk job selling dental equipment. And nothing will make you want to smash people in the face like sitting in the cube all day. So I was talking to a buddy of mine from college just about life and things, saying, man, I really need an outlet out here. And he said, there's a guy out there who's doing no-gi jiu-jitsu. It's a lot like wrestling. You use overhooks instead of grabbing their gi. And his name's Eddie Bravo. I think he's right nearby. You should check out his website. So I got on Eddie's website and got the number and gave him a ring. He asked what my background was, and I told him I'd been wrestling since I was 5. And he was like, awesome, we love it, come on in. And I went in that night and, fell in love that I love jiu-jitsu. I love the guys in the gym. And, pretty soon after, a bunch of the guys there who were already pro fighters, namely Jason Chambers and Amir Renovardi, Cara Parisian was in it sometimes back then. But those, Jason and Amir were really the pros in the gym, and they said, you've got some talent, you want to give it a shot. And the idea terrified me. I'd been in, a ton of street fights, But it's one thing when it just jumps off and it's instinct. It's another thing to know that there's another individual your same size and weight, ideally, with a similar skill set who's training for 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is, and knows that on this day I'm going to meet you and I'm going to try and smash you. And that scared the hell out of me. I remember sitting in class in high school, knowing that I had to fight some kid after school and just, feeling horrible. My stomach was in knots and just so nervous and just hated feeling that way. Hated that nervous feeling. And I guess I'm a masochist because then I decided, okay, that's scary. I'm going to try and do that for a living. But I guess that's sort of my MO. If something's frightening to me, I like to do it. I want to charge it. I want to push forward and conquer it. If I'm a snowboarder, cliffs are one of my favorite things because it's that same thing. It's like, all right, just do it. Push forward, make it happen, jump, and then when you land and you're down and you're safe, it's like it's like a sense of relief. But it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. And I went in, I fought my first fight. I ended up submitting the kid in the second round. Probably should have been a TKO, but Cecil Peoples was the ref. So you know how that goes. So he let it go, a nice long time. The guy turned over, and I finished him with the RNC. But I loved it. I was super high on the experience. I was probably up for 2 days afterwards, just on the adrenaline, and I just sort of dove into it full time. I asked for a leave of absence at work to train for my next fight. They wouldn't give it to me, so I quit and started working security at the beginning, to make ends meet while I was, just making my way up through the ranks and teaching lessons at the gym and things like that. But yeah, really embraced the whole fighter lifestyle, back in 2006. So 2006, 6 years of doing it full time, doing it.
Definitely, yeah. We actually had Eddie Bravo on a few months back. Really, really cool guy to chat with. When did you get started with 10th Planet? Like, how long have you been training over there now?
I moved to LA in June of 2005, and I think I started training with Eddie in October of 2005.
Oh wow! And so that was a pretty quick turnaround from then to your first professional mixed martial arts fight in May of 2006.
Yeah, I'd scrapped a lot growing up, and I watched. I was watching the UFCs in high school. My dad used to get the VHS tapes from Blockbuster, and so I'd watch those, and me and my buddy Tim, we'd go into the wrestling room. We had bag gloves because they had like a thumb where you could grab, and so we'd spar with bag gloves and try out the moves that we saw in the videos and things like that. So I wasn't afraid of conflict. I boxed, never with a coach or anything, but roughneck kids growing up, we like to box at parties in the yard and things like that. So it just seemed like a natural progression, and the idea that I could make money and my friends could watch instead of throwing me into a cab and running from the cops afterwards, it seemed like a step in the right direction.
Definitely, yeah. It sounds like, for someone who has been told by a doctor he has the hardest bones he's ever operated on, it sounds like fighting is the perfect thing to do. Talking about your MMA career, obviously, like we talked about, there's been a little bit of trials and tribulations recently, but going from May of 2006 and until now, what has your crowning achievement been thus far in your MMA career?
I think it had to be second round TKO stoppage of Edson Berto out in Florida on the Elite XC Heat card where Kimbo got knocked out by Seth Petrozelli. That fight was big. I took that. That was my first fight back after having my jaw broken, and we took that fight on 10 days' notice. And my trainer at the time, Chris Riley, he thought that I was up for it, and I don't back down, so I'll take any fight. So I said, sure, let's do it. And everybody, all of my friends, everybody in the world came out of the woodwork telling me I was stupid and how he was too much for me and faster than me and way, I needed a couple warm-up fights to get up there, and I was worried, when everybody started talking, it got to me, and I actually went to a study group with Dr. Peter Goldman. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him. He works with a lot of the mixed martial artists, works with BJs, worked with Eddie, pretty much. I just saw a tweet the other day, Guy Metzger went in and saw him. But he's basically one of the greatest chiropractors in the world. But he runs a study group sort of on metaphysical practices and study and things like that. And I was a group with him and expressed my fears, and he said, that's sort of that's an opportunity. Anytime you feel those fears is really an opportunity, and it's an opportunity to move and take action. And after speaking with him, I said, it's like, I'm afraid, I'm scared, I'm nervous, but okay, let's move forward with it and let that fear be a catalyst for change and a catalyst for growth. And that's one of the things I really believe in. It's like there's no such thing as a bad fight or a bad acid trip. It's like if you have an expectation of going into something, then expectations are what leads to letdown. But if you go into something with no expectations except for treating it as a lesson and looking to learn from it, then there's really no bad experiences. So I came into the fight, with an open mind, ready to see where I was at and to test myself, and really felt like I was in the zone. It was one of the fights where everything felt perfect when I was out there. I didn't get to see that fight on tape for probably 2 months afterwards. Elite XC was folding. It was hard to get a hold of the tape. It didn't air. But when I got the tape, I saw that I'd walked through everything. I got kicked in the face. I got hit with a flying knee in the face, but I left the fight and I didn't think I'd been hit, and finished him in the second round. So that was really the turning point there. It was a turning point in a lot of different ways. That fight was a turning point for me, but it was definitely my biggest achievement. I was out in Miami. We ended up staying out there for a couple of days afterwards to hang out and celebrate the victory. It was real fun. I was just like 7-1. I was out but came out and finished him in the second when nobody thought I stood a chance. So for me, that was the highlight of my career.
Definitely, yeah. That Elite XC card actually had a lot of pretty decent fights on it. You had Cyborg on that card, Gina Carano, yeah. Ninja Hua. You talked about Kembo. Yeah, you talked Benji. About Kembo. Yep, you had Benji, you had Roy Nelson get knocked out by Andrei Arlovsky, Shields versus Paul Daly. There were a lot of decent scraps on that card for sure.
Yeah, it was a great card. It was fun to be down there, with Jake a little bit afterwards. He's a friend of mine, and just being out, to get a good win and to be out in Miami. They've got a great electronic music scene down there, and great nightlife, beautiful women. It was a fun time.
Certainly, yeah. Conor, we really appreciate you coming on. The last question we ask all of our guests. Lieben likes cotton candy flavored. Anik, John Anik's actually lactose intolerant. Charlie Brinneman's a vanilla man. What is Conor Heun's favorite flavor of ice cream?
Flavor of ice cream. I love ice cream. It's like girls. I couldn't just have one. It's got to be Breyers. Breyers. Yeah, I probably like Breyers vanilla bean. That's simple, nothing fancy, but I like that. I like a lot of different things. Like Trenton Monkey, feeling crazy.
Definitely. I think you're our first guest to go brand specific, so that's also very, very impressive.
No artificial flavors, no artificial preservatives, no artificial colors. That's my deal. I don't need any of that garbage.
Definitely, that's
a lot of those ice cream. No green mint chocolate chip for me.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you sharing your story. Again, the website is funtofighter.com/fighters/Conor Heun. I think you have your own website too, ConorHeun.com. You're on Twitter @Conor Heun. That's ConorHeun. Do you have any other shout-outs or plugs you'd like to get out there before we let you go?
No, I just want to thank all my friends who gave up the memberships at their gym, donated that, all my sponsors who supported me over the years. Really, the guys here at Zingano, BJJ, and Broomfield, Leicester Bowling, my wrestling coach when I'm out here in Colorado, of course Eddie Bravo, Ivan Salavari up in Seattle, and those are the people who really helped me. So thank you guys, appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks again, man. Good luck, and we'll definitely talk to you sometime in the future.
All right, thanks so much. I appreciate you guys having me on the show.
All right, take it easy, buddy.
All righty, bye-bye.
And that was Conor Heun. Really fun having him on. Really kind of intriguing story he's got, going through that insurance claim stuff. If anyone's ever had to deal with an insurance company, it's a pain in the ass enough when they are actually covering your bills, and when they aren't, I couldn't even imagine. But he has a very good disposition with it too. Seems really positive. If it was me, I don't know if I could be that positive with the whole ordeal. But yeah, really inspiring. Both seeing him keep a sunny disposition, and all of the fans and friends in mixed martial arts who really appreciate the work he does coming back in and making their impact felt. Chris, you back with us?
I am. That was a fantastic interview. Seems like a really genuine guy. Really, really nice dude.
Thank you. And if you are listening live on the Ustream feed, the volume may have been a little funky, but I'll definitely change that up in post. So if you're listening on YouTube or iTunes, you'll be thinking, what the fuck is he talking about? It sounded pretty level the whole time. But, so, Chris, you do anything fun during the interview? A technical note, the bandwidth was getting a little shaky, so Chris popped off the call, so it was just Conor and I talking during that. You write a couple chapters in your novel? Play a little piano?
Oh, yeah, my sonnet.
Play with yourself?
I was working on my sonnet. No, actually... I surprisingly was just staring at the Skype screen listening. Nothing extraordinary, but it was worth listening in.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And, I guess let's get straight into some MMA goodness. I'll spit out that website one more time because it really does bear repeating. It's fundaFighters.com/fighters/Conor-Heun. That's CONORHEUN. If you can give anything, every single dollar counts in helping Conor getting back on the road to recovery. Let's move on. UFC 155. We mentioned it briefly. It had its ups. It had its downs. I'll really quickly go over the prelims. A few of those. We'll touch on a few of them. John Marega defeating Chris Carey. I swear to God, I mispronounce his name every time. Carriasso. It's Carriasso?
Carriasso, exactly.
Carriasso. John Marega defeating Chris Carriasso via guillotine a minute into the third round. Max Holloway getting a split decision victory against Leonard Garcia. I saw a lot of people on Twitter were upset about that, but it was a close fight. It really could have gone either way. I was not surprised whatsoever when it was announced as a split decision. Like they say, you can't let it go to the judges. And you also had El Luchador, Eric Perez, defeating Brian Bloodworth via TKO punches, the first round, 4 minutes in. A few prelims I did want to talk about. Todd Duffy, a guy known for coming out of the gate strong, came out and put Phil DeFreeze away 2 minutes in. Does this put Duffy in a place where you want to see him fight a top 20 heavyweight, or do you still want to see him fight another guy to make sure he's really got what it's God damn it, I can't speak tonight. Has what it takes to and if I sound horrible, I've been super sick the last few days. It's probably why I'm stammering through all my words and I sound like a frog. I've gotten this flu. It is a
little bit AIDS.
Super AIDS flu. That's what I got. But yeah, does this put Duffy in a place where you want to see him fight a top 10, top 20 heavyweight yet?
Absolutely, it does. Duffman's back, and he's one of those guys that I've been excited to watch. Yeah, he's one of those guys that just looks like a super freak, and surprisingly, man, I mean, he's on TRT. I know that, but he doesn't look too juiced out. You know, like Alistair Overeem obviously is taking everything out there, but Duffy looks like just kind of a natural prodigy. If you look at his jaw, it's like completely square, and his skill set is pretty amazing. He took some hard shots from DeFries, surprisingly, but ended up putting him away. Absolutely, I think he deserves a top 20 guy. I think that he proved by just putting it to DeFries that he can beat those lower level guys. So let's give him the stairs. Step up.
Yeah, you know, he only has 2 losses on his career, and those are to 2 extremely skilled guys who've both fought in Pride, even Mike Russo and Alistair Overeem. Neither of those guys are slouches in the least, and to be completely honest, he could have beaten Russo. I think Russo kind of surprised him. He wasn't really offering much offense up until that UFC 114 fight where halfway through the 3rd round he just came out with that huge KO punch and then literally the tiniest little punch, the
Hammer Fist of Doom.
The Hammer Fist of Doom. You know, thinking who I want Duffy to fight, I really think it would be totally reasonable to put him up against a guy like a I don't know. You've got a Stipe Miocic who just lost to Stefan Struve. Brandon Schaub and LeVar Johnson are fighting each other next month. Maybe the winner of that. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where the trajectory of Duffy's career goes after this. Moving on to another prelim fight, Miles Jury defeating Michael Johnson via unanimous decision. This one really surprised me. We talked about it here and on the roundtable. I think everyone pretty much agreed Michael Johnson was going to win that. Johnson was the favorite. He had fought much more talented guys than Miles Jury had a lot more experience. But Miles Jury, really... the only UFC fight he had before that was the Tough 15 finale against Chris Saunders. Not many people thought he'd go out there and put a beating on Michael Johnson like he did, but Johnson didn't seem to have any answers for the wrestling of Miles Jury during that fight. Do you think Miles Jury is the real deal in the lightweight division?
I don't think we found out much from that fight, and to be honest, I didn't watch it, so I think that was the one that I missed. But if he beat Michael Johnson by decision, Johnson's one of those guys that finishes or gets finished, so I don't think we learned much from it. And just for the record, I'm pretty sure I was the only dissenter that said I had a feeling that Miles Jury would win this one. So I'll have to go back and check it out, but pretty sure I called it. I just had a gut feeling, and it worked for once.
Yeah, really this sort of makes me question Michael Johnson's position in the lightweight division. After rolling through Shane Roller, no pun intended, Tony Ferguson, Danny Castillo, he did fight 4 times in 2012, really active guy. But, I just being tossed around by Jury, I thought he had learned a lot from that submission loss from Paul Sass and really sort of evolved a bunch at the Black Zillions training down there in Miami. But neither guy I really can put a finger on where they are in the lightweight division. Obviously, Jury's going to get a better opponent next. Johnson will have a chance to rebound after this, and we'll really get sort of a true bearing on where either guy lies in that division. Another lightweight fight, talking about that division, Jamie Varner defeating Melvin Gillard via split decision. You rarely see a split decision that goes 30-27, 27-30, and 30-27. Adelaide Bird being the judge that gave it 27-30 to Melvin Gillard. Somehow, even though if you watched that fight, you would have saw that Jamie Varner easily won all three of those rounds. Actually, Rogan, who is, rarely, he'll usually stay pretty objective. If there's a bad judge call, he won't go too crazy about it. But actually, on the telecast, when it was read out, Rogan actually said, whoever scored that fight 30 to 27 for Melvin Guillard should never judge a mixed martial arts fight ever again. Just another indicator of how screwed up these state commissions are. Adelaide Bird's going to be out there at the next Vegas event. There's literally, in every other job, if you fuck up that hard on such a regular basis, you don't keep your job. It seems like MMA judge is the one job that you can't really get fired from. What do you think was up with it? You think there was any fuckery involved as far as money being passed around? Because it almost seems like it was either that or she just put the 10s on the wrong side of the scorecard. She's colorblind. Maybe she thought the red was blue and the blue corner was red. There's really nothing that can explain it, because especially from someone who's commissioned as a mixed martial arts judge, I literally could show a 5-year-old Melvin Guillard versus Jamie Varner. They'd be like, yeah, Jamie Varner won that fight pretty easily. I just cannot understand how in her right mind she could have judged that for for Melvin Guillard.
Yeah, it's a broken record, man. These judges, the whole system is just ridiculous. Like Joe Rogan has brought up multiple times, they don't want to admit that they're wrong, and that's the only thing that's keeping change from coming. Change is needed. As far as what she was saying, who cares? They're dumb. They mess up things all the time. That's why I really appreciate guys like Conor Heun, Joe Lozon, Alistair Overeem, guys that go out there and finish, so we don't have to deal with these three idiots that I don't know what they're doing. They might be playing Angry Birds or tweeting their friends, but they really need to clean shop. I'd actually kind of like the UFC to get something going, man. Dana White says all the time, it's out of my hands, it's in the commission, but there's got to be something he can do. There's got to be some kind of lobbying or something to get change going, because it's just retarded.
Well, as long as you have people like Keith Kaiser with their head 2 feet up their own ass, I really find it hard to see how much change is going to happen. Kaiser, I won't go on a rant, but I can't have any respect for an athletic commissioner who does stuff like, oh, well, we all know why Nick Diaz was drinking water. I could literally get on a rant and start screaming about it, but I'll try not to. It's just a sad state of these athletic commissions, and I'd like to see a little bit of change. The last prelim card, or the last prelim fight that I wanted to touch on was Eddie Wineland, our boy, friend of the show, going in, defeating Brad Pickett. That was another one which I scored 30-27, and another judge somehow scored it against him. But nonetheless, he won 30-27, 30-27, 28-29. Where does this put Eddie Wineland in the bantamweight title picture? I think he's back in the heat.
Definitely back in the heat. With two impressive performances like that against top-tier guys. I think he needs to do one more, because he did lose 2 in a row before this current streak. So I think to really solidify himself as number one contender, a decision over Brad Pickett doesn't really help that case.
No, it doesn't. You have Henan Barrow and Michael McDonald, who will be fighting later on this month in England for the interim bantamweight championship. Well, Dominic Cruz, Dominic, a fighter I don't really root for, but you've really got to feel for a guy who has got to go through 2 knee surgeries in the span of 9 months because the first one didn't take. That's such a bizarre story. Thinking about the fighters in the UFC, I think it would make perfect sense to put Eddie Wineland up against Rafael Sunciao, who just had that win last month against Mike Easton. I think they pair up pretty interestingly. And yeah, honestly, if Cruz can't come back to fight the winner of Barrow versus McDonald, I would say give the next shot to the winner of Wineland versus Sunciao, because looking through that bantamweight roster, You have Faber now, who's locked up in a fight with Ivan Minjavar. It seems like a lot of these top UFC bantamweights are currently tied up. Mizugaki is going to be fighting Brian Caraway. I can't really think. I guess Brian Bowles is available, but he hasn't fought in a long time.
And he wouldn't deserve that anyways.
No. Also coming off a loss, the last fight. His last fight actually was at UFC 139 against Uriah Faber, and it was a while ago. This definitely throws Eddie Wineland back in the heap of bantamweights. The UFC does need to do a little bit better job at signing bantamweights. You have a lot of top bantamweights who just aren't in the division and need to be, like your Bibiano Fernandez's, Marcus Galvao, Tyson Nam, another guy, Eduardo Dantas, Alexis Villa, Joe Warren, all of these decent bantamweight fighters who easily could pose a threat to the interim belt or the undisputed belt at bantamweight. Let us get to the main card. Bro, our buddy Chris Lieben came on a few months back, was telling us stories about his uncle shooting himself in the foot in a storage unit, shooting at rats. Really entertaining guy, came out with a fire in his eye. Just from what he looked like at the weigh-ins, eyes bugging out of his head, he looked, ready to go. Just didn't know what really was going on with him, because Derek Brunson went out there and really imposed his will. Wasn't the most exciting fight in the world, but Lieben just didn't seem to be there. A lot of people blaming it on ring rust. I don't know what it was, but Derek Brunson defeating Chris Lieben via unanimous decision.
Yeah, I think ring rust is a huge factor. And the other point that I'm going to bring up is Lieben doesn't really ever do well against wrestlers because his takedown defense isn't super solid. Look at what Munoz did to him. I think that what he needs is a change of scenery. He's comfortable in Hawaii. He needs to get out there in one of those super camps like the Black Zillions, ATT, AKA, Extreme Couture. Go back to Team Quest, because just training with these lower level guys at his own gym obviously isn't getting the job done. And, it sucked to see that happen to him, a guy that I think we all root for, at least most of us. So I think that would be the solution to his issue.
Certainly, yeah. Obviously, when we actually talked to him, we were gonna have him on 1 week, but he ended up flying out to Colorado to train with Ed Herman. Obviously, it sounds like he's doing a lot of traveling to train and stuff. Obviously living in Hawaii, that is the life. But maybe come over for 2 or 3 months before your next fight to train, like you said, with an AKA, with a Black Zillion type mega camp where you can get a lot of different styles taught with you, because we've seen Lieben fight good wrestlers before and fare much better against them. I don't necessarily think this is this means that Derek Brunson is the best wrestler he's ever fought. But really kind of a head scratcher there, and hopefully we see Lieben come out as the same old Lieben who just fires away and knocks people out. That was the first middleweight fight on the main card. The second middleweight fight, Yushin Okami defeating Alan Belcher via unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. Yushin Okami is just such a big middleweight. Yeah, he did lose that fight to Tim Boach, a fight he probably should have won, but just, Boach is always ready with that comeback shot. You never can count the, Boach out of any fight. He has a ton of willpower and a huge right hand. But yeah, with Yushin Okami beating Alan Belcher, do you think he's back in the title hunt at middleweight?
Well, he's always going to be perennial top 5, I feel.
Me too.
His style is not very appealing to most people. I myself don't mind it that much. I mean, guess what? He has that smothering style, but so does Chael Sonnen. You got to find an answer for it. And I know that Alan Belcher was training with Ben Askren for this fight, so he had a lot of wrestling training. And Alan Belcher is a giant middleweight as well. I'd say size for size, they're about the same size. He's a very strong middleweight. Look at what he did to Toquinho. It just seems like Alan Belcher will never ascend past that level that he's at. He seems to kind of fail against A-level guys. So I think it'll take maybe, switching something up. I couldn't tell you what, but Okami for sure puts him back in the hunt. I would personally like to see him win 2 more big-time fights before getting another shot, if not more, because he got absolutely embarrassed against Anderson Silva.
Yeah, you make a pretty good point. Yushin is a giant middleweight, and Belcher is actually bigger. Belcher is just as tall, but has 3 inches of reach on him. Wasn't really able to use that reach, as Yushin Okami is a guy who loves just getting in there and closing the distance, really making it a more of a scrap than a sparring match.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead. Were you about to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, one thing about Duke Rufus that he was saying is stop going for the kicks, because that's going to give openings to Okami, and start using your hands. Look at Alan Belcher's win against Wilson Govea at UFC 107. His most dominant performance ever, probably. He absolutely put it to Govea, made Govea quit against the cage, and he used crisp, straight punches, no hooks, no kicks. So I think it was just his pride. He was headhunting. He was looking for that huge, big-time knockout against Okami, and that's not something you want to do against Okami. You got to wear the guy out and frustrate him.
Definitely, yeah, and that I think earned Fight of the Night awards at UFC 107, which is impressive for a fight that only went 1 round. But Belcher seems like one of these guys. He gets on a win streak, and then once he starts getting toward the title, he drops it to an elite guy. I don't really know what Belcher can do to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, your guess is as good as mine. He's doing almost everything right. It's that one intangible factor that turns you from a good fighter into a great fighter, which he just can't seem to find. I wish him the best luck. He's one of my favorite middleweights out there because the guy brings it every time.
Really does. And as far as a future opponent for Yushin Okami, just thinking of, those top middleweights, Hector Lombard's available, but I don't know stylistically if I would enjoy that Yushin Okami versus Lombard fight, even though both of them are black belts in judo. So Lombard definitely could sort of offer a counter to Yushin Okami's judo expertise. I would maybe want to see him fight Luke Rockhold, who's going to be coming over from Strikeforce. That would be a real interesting match.
Great ideas. I think both of those are intriguing. One, obviously, stylistically would be more fun. The Lombard I like because it'll give Lombard a real chance at redemption against a huge middleweight, because he didn't do that well against Boach. That fight was atrocious, and he didn't look that great. I think he should have won that fight, but he seems to kind of struggle against the top-tier, bigger middleweights. Luke Rockhold, stylistically, is dynamite. He's just so well-rounded. I mean, he throws flying switch kicks, and he's got the excellent AKA grappling base. But for me, it's an easy answer, my friend, and that is Costa Philippou. I think that Costa Philippou is a perfect opponent for a guy that's now on a 5-fight win streak, just finished a top-tier guy. I think that would give Philippou the chance to solidify himself. I mean, he's already been solidified, but to solidify himself as a number 1 contender.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on to the next middleweight fight, where we saw 2 of the guys you just mentioned, Costa Philippou and Tim Boach, go at it. Costa dominated Boach the entire fight, finished it in the 3rd round, about halfway through with punches. And I was going to ask, Philippou's reached probably the pinnacle of where he's been in his entire career. Came up in the ring of combat, went 7-1 there. Since joining the UFC, is 5-1. Really, talk about a dynamite fighter. He has some of the best boxing, probably has the best boxing in the middleweight division. His only loss coming to Nick Catone, which is a kind of a head scratcher. We don't really think of Nick Catone as a top guy in the UFC, but maybe that was just because he was, fighting higher than he needed to be at at 195 pounds. But yeah, you were talking about his 5-fight win streak. That recent win against Tim Boetsch, Yushin Okami would be a really interesting match as far as him fighting for the title. Do you realistically see Costa Philippou rising to the level of being deserved a title shot?
I think that the possibility is definitely there. Do I think he has a chance in hell of beating Anderson Silva? Slight. I think he has a very slight chance because his boxing is so technical. He has a lot of power, and we've seen just his changes in his grappling. The guy is a monster. He's pretty thick for the weight class. He's not that tall, but he's pretty big. So I think physically he's a good challenge. I think that if he can get by Yushin Okami, what else is left for him? I mean, how many fights does he have to win to get there? So I think beating Okami would solidify him and put him in line behind the winner of Bisping and Belfort, if Bisping wins.
Yeah, and Costa does offer up a unique challenge for a lot of people because not only is he one of the best boxers at 185 pounds, but he's a southpaw, so it's not really what a lot of people are comfortable with. Speaking about that though, you know, he really is a monster. He has great boxing, but personally, I don't see him getting past the wrestlers of the middleweight division, the Chris Weidmans, the Luke Rockholds, even the Michael Bispings. Even though he's not necessarily a wrestler, I think Bisping, not as good as a boxer power-wise, but he's just as crisp, probably has just as good footwork, and in his movement around the ring, you know, after that Dan Henderson loss, I think that was really embarrassing. He literally circled into the right hand. The funniest thing about watching a replay of that fight is seconds before Henderson knocks him out, Rogan yells, "He's circling to the left, Mike, he's circling to the left!" And he circles to the left, right into that H-bomb right hand.
Such a good moment. And you know what? My favorite moment was when Henderson floors Bisping and then kisses the hand that he does the dolphin dive with. Just mwah!
Yep. That was probably the crowning moment in H-bomb history. I do think Costa Philippou is a legitimate elite middleweight, but at least for the time being, I just don't see him being able to rise to a title shot because I think Sonnen will probably move back to middleweight after the John Jones fight. And if Ramses is listening, I'm sure he's dialing in frantically now saying that, why would he move back to middleweight when he's the light heavyweight champion? But realistically, he is a huge underdog, so just speaking out of stats, if he does lose to John Jones, I do think he'd move back to middleweight. And I don't see Costa Philippou getting past a guy like a Bisping, like a Rockhold, like a Weidman, like a Belfort even. I don't know if Costa would be able to get past, but you know what?
Sorry for cutting you off. I disagree with Costa not being able to hang with the bigger grapplers because he actually out-grappled Tim Boetsch, and Yushin Okami did out-grapple Tim Boetsch, but Tim Boetsch did win that fight, and he made Tim Boetsch look like an amateur on the ground. I mean, he was sitting in half guard, raining those shots down, and to do that against a big, powerful guy like Tim Boetsch, I think was a statement, and I think it really said a lot about his grappling improvements.
Yeah, the Barbarian definitely is not a slouch grappling whatsoever, but I would say Boetsch is more of a striker than a grappler, and looking at all the guys Costa Philippou's fought, I mean, maybe the best grappler he's fought is, I'm looking at it, maybe Court McGee. I don't know. I'm not sure. It's probably Boetsch, but
Fakuta's pretty good too. I don't know if it was Donnie Yang or Fakuta. I can't remember which one. I mean,
it was Fakuta.
Okay, Fakuta.
Heyo. Yeah, George Rivera. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has fought a lot of decent grapplers. I'm not gonna take that away from any of his opponents, but he hasn't fought any elite grapplers. And, but Costa Philippou in his own right, training at the Serra-Longo fight team alongside of Chris Weidman. He's probably getting better every single day, especially with that wrestling over there. He's a blue belt with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Definitely can improve on his own, and even though he is in his 30s, he's relatively young in his fight career. He started fighting in 2008, so he only has 5 years of damage on his body, and we definitely could see him evolve quite a bit in the middleweight division.
I agree, good sir.
Let us get to the main and co-main, and before the main and co-main, I was looking on Twitter, and everyone was bitching. This card is horrible. Wah. Derek Brunson, Chris Lieben, Yushin Okami, Alan Belcher. I practically went to sleep. Oh my god, this is horrible. Dana White even alluded to the fact that the main and co-main saved the pay-per-view. And Jesus Christ, what a couple of cards, or a couple of fights rather, with the main and co-main event. And the fight of the night deservedly went to Jim Miller versus Joe Lauzon. Holy shit, I've seen pictures Lauzon's put up recently of his face healing. It looks like he just got complete facial reconstruction with the giant scars above and below his eyes, and just two big old black eyes. His nose and mouth are fine, but he's got a lot of scar tissue now around his eyes. And God, what a warrior! Miller goes out there and beats Joe Lauzon's ass in the first round, nearly finishes the fight, just hands it to him. And the way I actually scored it, I scored it 29-28 Miller. I gave the first round to Jim Miller, and I gave the second round, the first round I gave to Jim Miller by a 10-8. The second round I actually gave to Joe Lauzon. How often do you see a guy lose a round 10-8 and then storm back in there and win the next round? That is Frankie Edgar level determination, getting your ass handed to you in the first round and just storming back like a boss and giving it right back. I gave the second round 10-9 to Lauzon, and the third round was very back and forth. Both fighters had their moments. Was about to give it to Lauzon to make it a 28-28 draw, but Miller sort of roared back toward the end of the third round, so I gave the third round a 10-10 draw. Man, that was a hell of a fight. What did you think of it?
Yeah, hell of a fight, and good point as far as Joe Lauzon roaring back. I mean, he's a real man's man, just like Conor Heun. He's the kind of guy that is never out of a fight, and I think not only is Joe Lauzon one of the most strongest, like mentally strong guy in the UFC, if not in MMA, but he's solidified himself to me as a perennial top 15. The guy really brings it. I mean, and what makes it more incredible to me is that he's been doing this since college. He actually worked as an IT guy for a university and had to take some leave to go do the Ultimate Fighter 5. So he's a bona fide geek, and he just kicks ass. That being said, Jim Miller to me, wow. I mean, the combinations he was putting together, the standing elbows. I have never been sold on Jim Miller. I always thought that he was overhyped. His huge win streak leading up to his fight with Benson Henderson, I thought that he kind of beat a bunch of lower level guys, had a bunch of decisions on there. So I wasn't really sold on him. And then he lost to Diaz. I'm like, okay, this guy, really not that great. And
he didn't just lose; he got his ass handed to him.
Yeah, from bell to bell. And same thing with Benson Henderson. Benson Henderson savaged Jim Miller just as bad as he savaged Nate Diaz, which goes to show you how badass that dude is. But I'm sold on Jim Miller now. I am truly sold. The guy is an animal, and you can tell that he's been putting that hard work in. His MMA game looks fantastic and on point. He escaped submissions. He beat the shit out of Joe Lauzon, opened him up. His striking looked on point. So Jim Miller looks to me to be an A-level fighter at this point in his career.
Definitely, and Joe's definitely always been a fighter who I would root for just because he's got a very exciting style, has literally won every single one of his fights All 22 wins on his record by finish. You gotta love that. 18 submissions. One of the most active grapplers in the entire UFC, where you have a lot of grapplers. John Fitch, who will just use their grappling to get an advantageous position and just sort of sit with it and take a decision. Joe uses his jiu-jitsu, which is amazing. He probably has the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC for a guy who isn't a black belt. It's hard to believe, but Joe's actually only a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He is incredible tapping out guys. You know, I mentioned last week that submission against Jamie Varner just slowed down. That is such an exemplification of how beautiful the sport of mixed martial arts is. Varner shoots for a takedown, and literally within about 5 seconds, Lauzon goes through 3 progressions of jiu-jitsu to sink in the triangle choke after sweeping the guard after a failed guillotine attempt. Just real beautiful. And after showing this grit against Jim Miller, Joe is one of my favorite fighters in the UFC now. And if he's not one of your favorite fighters, then obviously you don't know enough about Joe Lauzon.
Yeah, go fuck yourself.
Seriously, I mean, both of these guys are extremely likable too, in and out of the cage. Joe's always making video logs like Dana White before his fights. Both of them extremely likable guys. Miller's one of my favorite fighters just because one of my best friends, Murphy, literally looks exactly like Jim Miller. Actually, when Miller lost to Diaz, it kind of made me sad because I literally felt like Nate Diaz was beating the shit out of my buddy Murphy. I was like, no, Murphy, you're biting your own tongue off. You look like a hedgehog. No. But, yeah, both of them are insane fighters. If it didn't matter, you know, if it wasn't one of these things where both guys are jockeying for a title shot, I would say just let Joe and Jim fight each other every few months. But I don't know if either of their faces could take it, because both of these dudes just went out there, looked extremely impressive. Jim Miller obviously coming out the victor after that beautiful first round, like you said, landing combinations, doing lots of work, going out there, being extremely active on the feet. I would say probably the best striking performance Jim Miller's ever put on. Has had pretty good fights against guys like Kamal Shalorus, submitted Charles Oliveira, which that actually, I was watching UFC Ultimate Submissions a few nights ago, and they had the Miller Carlos Oliveira fight on, and God, that too, beautiful submission victory. Both of these guys, we could hug their nuts all night as we've been doing the last 5 minutes. But let me get to the question for Jim Miller. Where's he go from here? You know, it's a kind of tough because he, you know, we had talked about those losses to Benson Henderson and Nate Diaz. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights with those losses and the wins against Melvin Guillard and Joe Lauzon. I still have him in my top 10, even though he got his ass handed to him. I guess he didn't have 2 separate
asses.
He had ass number 1 handed to him in one fight, and ass number I do think he's top 10 in the UFC lightweight division, and it would make a lot of sense to see him fight Rafael Dos Anjos in his next fight. Dos Anjos coming off that November victory against Mark Bocek. What do you think's next for Miller?
That's a perfect choice, man. Couldn't have said it better myself. Lightweight's such a logjam with Maynard, the Cerrone Pettis winner, Eddie Alvarez, if he ever gets his ass over to the UFC.
Melendez.
Gilbert, Mr. Overrated, bloated record. Melendez, obviously, was probably coming in and getting a title shot for some stupid reason. So, Rafael Dos Anjos makes the most sense. I mean, he just beat a guy that has looked really good lately. So, thinking of guys right now, lightweight division, shit, man, even, Jamie Varner. I mean,
yeah, you have that fight later this month at UFC on Fox, Matt Wyman versus TJ Grant. Those are another.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about this? How about to test out his grappling? Yet again, why not Jacob Volkmann? Just got his first sub ever in his UFC career. He did get sass-angled, but before that, he was on a 4-fight win streak.
Sass-angle!
Yeah, let's give Volkmann not only a huge test, but what will most likely be a giant ass beating that we all want him to take.
Yeah, and you know Volkmann's going to be full of rage after Barack Obama being reelected, which say what you will about political, ideals. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican, just don't shove your views into our face, and that's exactly what Volkmann did. Barack Obama should get a glassectomy. Just keep, politics, religion, keep it to yourself. And
that's
Volkmann,
not why we watch the sports, to hear your
exactly. I would go to Fox News if I wanted to hear someone talking shit about Barack Obama. So, I think it was on Tapology. I looked at rankings for the top 10 most hated fighters in the UFC, and Jacob Volkmann actually made the list. So for someone with not too much notoriety to make a list of most hated, usually on the most hated list you see superstars and champions. You see John Jones and Tito Ortiz and Chael Sonnen. You usually don't see a guy who's not a threat for the title like Jacob Volkmann, but obviously he stirs up a lot of people. And whoever Miller fights next,
it's about ratings, not rankings.
It's about ratings, not rankings. The only thing I don't like about that one is I think Miller deserves more, especially after a fight against Lauzon. Either a fight against Dos Anjos or against the winner of T.J. Grant and Matt Wyman, or Volkmann. That would definitely be interesting. Let's move on to the main event: Cain Velasquez versus Junior Dos Santos. Cain Velasquez came out, man. He was angry about losing his belt to Junior Dos Santos on national television, the first televised UFC on Fox card. They only televised one fight, and it only went 64 seconds, Junior Dos Santos landing that shot of Velasquez. It was kind of funny before the fight. You saw Junior Dos Santos in his locker room joking, jumping around, laughing. It showed Cain Velasquez, and he was just sitting there quiet, staring at the wall. It seemed like he was a little more focused on the fight, and he went out there. Junior Dos Santos, bell to bell, 25 minutes. It didn't look like Dos Santos had a chance in hell. Cain Velasquez dominated every minute, every second of that fight, whether it was taking Dos Santos down. He even bullied Dos Santos standing up, which surprised a lot of people. And coming out of it, Junior Dos Santos looked like he just had a botched lip implant surgery and facial reconstruction. He looked fucked up.
Yeah, it looked fucked up. And I gotta say about this fight, not only did it surprise the hell out of me, it surprised the hell out of everyone. And on top of that, I think it might be the most surprising outcome in recent memory in title fights, dude. Because usually with the title fight, you can go, I see how this is going to play out. This one was super surprising. He dominated Dos Santos bell to bell, used an improved game plan, and even knocked down the champion with strikes. Junior Dos Santos' hands were at his waist, and you can tell that he's confident in his striking, but it also gives him the hand placement to stuff takedowns, which I'm sure he was worried about. Cain would fake a shot, make Dos Santos think that he was going to come in with wrestling because he tried to take him down a lot in the first round, and that set up his range and being comfortable to throw strikes. He absolutely battered the champion, and I am totally looking forward to Alistair Overeem versus Cain Velasquez.
Like they say, hell hath no fury than a Mexican scorned. And
I haven't heard that one.
No, he definitely went out there. He looked so impressive. Really, one of the things I mentioned on the roundtable, I said Junior Dos Santos had never fought a wrestler on the level of Cain Velasquez at 100%. Really, the only wrestlers he had faced in his career. Pardon me, that's the flu kicking in. Where Shane Carwin, who's not really known AIDS flu, who's not really known much for his wrestling technique, but more just strength. And Velasquez with a bum knee. Velasquez went out there and probably surprised Junior with just top level wrestling.
Yeah, that was a fantastic performance. After he beat Brock Lesnar, I was like, wow, this guy's incredible. And then when Dos Santos knocked him out, I was like, okay, maybe not as much as I thought, but this really puts him back on the map as probably a dominant champion until Alistair Overeem rips that strap from his waist like an angry monkey.
Hey-o, racism. Just kidding. But not really. Talking about Junior Dos Santos, obviously, when you listen to the roundtable tomorrow, you're going to hear Ramses go, "This was a conspiracy. Junior Dos Santos did not attempt to knock him out. He was not throwing punches. And I think Junior Dos Santos threw the fight. Black helicopters. I worked for Alex Jones, and he taught me the way of the conspiracy." Really, when it comes down to it, what I think happened was he just got beat up in the first round and was just so shocked and frazzled by it. He lost it mentally, and we have never seen Dos Santos really get tested that much. And I'm sure Dos Santos will come out stronger next time he's tested in a fight. But after he got his bell rung, it seemed like he just mentally checked out of the fight.
Yeah, mentally checked out. He just really took too much damage. Ultimately, that's what it was. He did not look anything like the JDS that we've seen because he got dominated, man. I think that was definitely a breaking point for sure.
Definitely pop on the MMA Playground if you haven't yet. I put up a GIF file of Junior Dos Santos' face round by round that Ramses actually originally tweeted out, and a lot of people compared Junior Dos Santos' face in the 5th round to the waterhead version of Jason Voorhees, to where shows him coming out of the water and he's all disfigured and mangled up. Did not look good whatsoever. Thinking about this, I thought it was a win-win as far as stylistic matchups, because if Junior Dos Santos would have won, we would have had Dos Santos versus Overeem, the best boxer versus the best kickboxer in the heavyweight division. But if Cain Velasquez won, it would probably lead to Daniel Cormier dropping down to light heavyweight, which is a topic we're going to get to in just a moment. Really interested about a potential matchup between Cormier and Jones. But let's talk about Cain Velasquez versus Alistair Overeem. Obviously Alistair Overeem is going to be able to defend himself against wrestlers a little bit better than Junior Dos Santos. Overeem, very experienced, had tons of fights in Pride. Now in the UFC, he has fought top wrestlers. He fought a Brock Lesnar and shrugged off any sort of takedown that Lesnar went for. He has fought tons of guys with tons of different skill sets. Cain versus Overeem. The one thing that my mind keeps going to, I was actually listening to Eddie Bravo Radio. Check that out. Our friend of the show, Eddie Bravo, came on a few months ago. We use his band Smoke Serpent's song as the intro and outro to all of our podcasts. That's Jiu-Jitsu by Smoke Serpent. That is the name of the song. Eddie brought up an incredibly salient point that stuck out like every single time I think about Cain versus Overeem, which is Cain is a great wrestler, but when he dives in for those power single legs, he puts his head, he puts his head out there, puts it out there, and it's on the outside. That is prime for a guillotine if Alistair's going for it. Alistair could either defend those takedowns with a knee, a kick, Or, I mean, what was Alistair known for the most in Pride? It was that guillotine. He locked down the guillotine on a ton of dudes who were game. Really good grapplers. He would sink down that guillotine. I'm actually going to his record now. I'm not sure how many fights he's won by guillotine, but there was definitely a stretch in Pride where he had like a few fights in a row, I think, just guillotine. Really sinks that in well. So I think if Cain's going to want to fight Overeem, he's not really going to be able to go in with that same takedown that he's been using, and that might change up his strategy and take away from his ability to wrestle and take down Overeem.
Yeah, great point. Great tactical evaluation there. I think that Alistair Overeem, with his size and his mentality, having been a world champion in K1, having been a champion in Strikeforce, having absolutely destroyed Brock Lesnar, he definitely looks like the man to dethrone Cain Velasquez. I think it's not going to be a one-rounder. I think that Cain is going to try and wear down Overeem, but Overeem is conditioned as shit. I mean, the guy fought 3 times in one night, at the last K1 event in 2010, at least in its old iteration. So I feel that Alistair Overeem is the perfect candidate to rip that title, and I'm looking forward to it. He's my favorite fighter of all time.
Certainly, yeah. We know you have 18 to 24 posters of him up on that wall in your mom's basement. So, yeah, Overeem is definitely going to be a top guy. Dana White's come out and said that the winner of Verdum versus Big Nog is going to get the title shot, but he's made so many claims about, the winner of this is going to get the title shot, and it hasn't worked out. If Overeem beats Bigfoot, I don't see any way in hell that he doesn't get the next title shot. Unless you have anything else for UFC 155, I guess we'll close the book on that. And you want to get to the fights we're pumped for?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you definitely have something prepared, so I'll go on a little rant about mine. So let's cue the music. Mine is sort of a hands down for the fight I'm pumped for. Michael Bisping versus Vitor Belfort. That is a great matchup. Both of these guys have been on fire. You have Michael Bisping. He's 5-1 in his last 6 fights. In his last 4 fights especially, he has looked absolutely incredible. And I do include that loss to Chael Sonnen on that. You look at every single one of his fights, and he has evolved so much since those losses to Vanderlei Silva and Dan Henderson back in 2009 and 2010, both grappling and standing up. Standing up, he is a powerhouse. He has some of the crispest boxing. I would say he and Costa Philippou, obviously, other than Anderson Silva, probably Bisping, Philippou, and Rockhold are some of the scariest dudes standing up. Michael Bisping just handed Jason Miller his ass, handed George Rivera his ass via TKO, or both of those via TKO. Just looked incredible in both of those fights. Even against Brian Stann, just dominated Stann both standing and on the ground. And Vitor Belfort also doing so amazing. In his last fight, became the closest fighter to defeat John Jones. That first round flying armbar really did a lot of damage to his arm. Did reportedly nerve damage to his arm. The two fights before that, beating Yoshihiro Akiyama and Anthony Johnson. You look at Vitor Belfort's record; he only loses to the best of the best. Since 2005. He's lost 2 fights. He's gone 7-2 in that span, losing only to the 2 best fighters alive right now in John Jones and Anderson Silva. Vitor Belfort is a man-possessed, looks absolutely amazing, and he's a big middleweight. His last 2 fights actually at 197 pounds and 205 pounds. even though he was able to fight at middleweight for that Anthony Johnson fight. Johnson obviously not being able to make weight. I'm still crossed on who I think is going to win this. I'm leaning toward Michael Bisping, but, Vitor is going to offer a lot of challenges for Bisping to get past, namely standing up. So, and you can't leave out that jiu-jitsu. He came pretty close to tapping John Jones. No one's done that before. So, jury's still out for me on Michael Bisping versus Vitor Belfort, but that's got to be the fight I'm pumped for January.
Very nice. The fight I'm pumped for is absolutely Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. How can you not be excited for that fight? It really just signifies. Is that a word? Signify?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yep. Signifies. Excuse me. The true number one contender
AIDS.
for the UFC lightweight strap, and both of these guys are fantastic. I think Anthony Pettis has had barely any fight time and cage time, but he absolutely has the skills to back it up. I mean, he's so unpredictable, just doing crazy off-the-cage shit. He uses a lot of capoeira moments. He's a Taekwondo black belt, trains with Ben Askren in wrestling, and also has some very crisp technical boxing, uses straight punches, which is very rare in mixed martial arts. He just throws everything down the pipe perfectly. I don't really need to go into detail about Donald Cerrone. The guy's an absolute savage and animal. He's a technician, and like you bring up so many times, he has this toolbox with so many tools to come from. His offensive and defensive wrestling has improved over the years after getting kind of out-wrestled by Jamie Varner. His guard game is vicious. He's always looking to attack, and his Muay Thai is absolutely savage and world-class. I think he went 19-2 in kickboxing. So the dude is an absolute animal, and I can't wait for this fight. I definitely going to be rooting for Donald Cerrone, but he has his hands full with Anthony Pettis. That's the fight I'm pumped for.
Hell yeah, let me cut the music. And really quick before we do get to the news, want to go over Dream 18. We won't break every fight down because we want to get to the news and still keep it around 2 hours. But really quickly, Tatsuya Kawajiri defeating Mishihiro Omigawa by unanimous decision. Shinya Aoki looking very good via verbal submission after a punch in the second round. Bibiano Fernandez choking out Yoshihiro Maeda in the first round. Melvin Manhoof with a KO in the first round against Dennis Kang. Sakurai defeating Phil Baroni via unanimous decision. Marlos Conan defeating Fiona Muxlow first round by armbar. And you had Will Brooks defeating Satohura Kitaoka. I fucked that up hugely via second round TKO. Which of those fights impressed you the most?
Was Aoki versus McKee a part of that, or did I fuck that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Definitely that one. It's actually a tie. I think that Aoki showed some vast improvements in his striking arsenal, and against a much more powerful wrestling-based guy, he did well strength for strength. Powerful. And he tapped out McKee by a strike. It was so weird. McKee just kind of gave up and tapped out against the ropes. I hate Antonio McKee, so to see that happen was absolutely fantastic. Never been a huge fan of Aoki, but it seems like he's turning himself around while training at Evolve MMA in Asia. And also Will Brooks defeating Kitaoka? I don't even know. That dude, because Kitaoka is a animal, super, super powerful grappling Japanese guy. I think he might be the strongest lower weight Japanese guy out there. He looks just jacked all the time. And to see him do that, to see Will Brooks do what he did to Kitaoka, it was absolutely fantastic because Will Brooks is kind of a no-name guy from the States. I'd never heard of him before, and he looks like a real-time prospect. I think the UFC needs to get this kid inside the Octagon stat because he just looked like a savage out there. I mean, college-level wrestling, but his striking was his, biggest strong suit. So I definitely thought that was surprising.
For sure, and I'll also pick two as well. I'll pick two who won their fights by by first round submissions. And also two people that I think should be brought into the UFC. You had Bibiano Fernandez defeating, defeating Yoshihiro Maeda via triangle choke. That was a great submission, along with the armbar by Marlos Conan in the first round. I think Marlos could offer, I'm not really a fan of Dana being wishy-washy with this women's bantamweight division. If you're going to commit to it, and bringing in Marlos Conan would be a really great way to expand the roster past, I believe they only have 3 women signed now, and Tate, Rousey, and Carmouche. Start bringing in top-level competition, and that would start with Marlos Conan. She's, fought a lot of these top women, and, that would be a great addition to the women's bantamweight division. So that was Dream 18, and let us get to the news.
Let's go.
And I was on repeat, so I started playing again. Going a little bumpy tonight. We're both a little sick. We got the new year popped up. I guess that doesn't have to do with any of the technical problems we've had tonight. But
hey man, roads that lead to greatness always have bumps. It's asphalt, so whatever. We do.
It's true. We do, and we will move on to the news. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, Gilbert Melendez apparently is likely to receive an immediate title shot. Does he deserve it? I know what your opinion on it is. I think he does. His last fight against Josh Thompson was a little rocky, but just look at his record. The guy was dynamite in Strikeforce. I almost just called Strikeforce Showtime. Jesus Christ. This Sudafed's getting to my fucking noggin. 4 out of his last fights were decisions. That Josh Thompson one was close, but those other decisions were one-sided beatdowns, whether it was the second Thompson fight, the Thompson fight, the George Masvidal fight, the Tatsuya Kawajiri fight, those were all beatdowns.
Don't forget Aoki.
The Aoki fight, that was a beatdown. He has looked excellent in Strikeforce. He's won his last 7 fights. All of them were championship fights. So in all 7 of those fights, he was going up against the top non-UFC lightweights in the world. I feel like, there's if there was an easy number 1 contender now in the lightweight division, like a Johnny Hendricks, who is somehow getting screwed out of a title shot, I would say, give him a fight first in the UFC before a title shot. But really, there are a lot of people in the lightweight division you could argue deserve a title shot, and probably the first fight that people would go to would be the winner of Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis. Both guys have already fought Benson Henderson before. Yes, Pettis did beat him, but he did lose a couple of key fights after that. And I think Gilbert Melendez does deserve an immediate title shot coming into the UFC.
Yeah, hell no, he doesn't deserve it over Pettis or Cerrone. I think he's probably the most overrated fighter in recent memory that's been announced to come over to the UFC. I don't think that the guy has solidified himself as a top lightweight ever. Kawajiri's now at a lower weight class. Josh Thompson has looked subpar against lower competition and did very well against Gilbert Melendez. I feel that Gilbert Melendez does have the ability to become a really high-level guy. I just don't see it. I don't know why everyone keeps on bringing this guy up and, put him up on a pedestal. It just doesn't really make sense to me. I've never understood it, so absolutely not.
Well, theoretically, if he were to get a title shot against Benson Henderson, which Dana White has hinted to being likely, how do you think Gilbert fares? I think he goes the same way as his teammate Nate Diaz. I actually think Nate Diaz poses more of a threat to Benson Henderson with his boxing and his jiu-jitsu grit. I would have loved to see if Diaz versus Benson Henderson would have gone the same way if Diaz hadn't injured his eye in the first round. I don't really think, especially because of the size difference, Gilbert is a guy who could theoretically move down to featherweight to fight, and Benson Henderson is an enormous lightweight. I don't think Gilbert has much of a shot against Benson Henderson, even though I do think he deserves it.
Yeah, what really is going to play out in this fight is the fact that Gilbert Melendez can absolutely hold his own in the grappling department. We're going to see Gilbert trying to use his boxing game. He's very one-dimensional on the feet, and I think Benson Henderson has a litany of tools, much like Donald Cerrone, Taekwondo black belt as well, some nice punches. So I think that Benson Henderson is just too good, much bigger, too fast, great fight IQ, great coaching. I see him winning this one, most likely a lopsided unanimous decision.
Yep, I think we agree on that front at least. Another guy coming over from Strikeforce, Daniel Cormier, officially inks a deal with the UFC, even though he is going to be fighting in a week and a half at that Strikeforce finale card against Dion Staring. Officially signed with the UFC and is hinting toward a move to 205 now that his teammate and friend Cain Velasquez is the heavyweight champion. What weight do you think Cormier should fight at before we talk about him fighting John Jones? Do you think he's more of a heavyweight, or he should fight at 205 pounds?
I think that he should absolutely fight at 205. He's solidified himself as a true top 10 by beating Josh Barnett. Even Dana White admits that beating Josh Barnett means something. So he can hang at the weight class. I just feel that to really become a legend, he should go down to 205. And I think, like we brought up many times, he is a nightmare for John Jones.
Definitely. And he's got a lot of wrestling credentials under his belt. He is the 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 United States champion at wrestling. He was the bronze medalist in 2007, and I looked it up. Every single one of those championships came at 96 kilograms, which equates out to 211 pounds. If he did all of his wrestling at 211 pounds, then 205 makes much more sense than 265. You saw him toss around a guy like Josh Barnett. Imagine him fighting at 205 pounds. You have guys at 205 who could be fighting at middleweight. Just imagine what Cormier would be able to do with some of those undersized light heavyweights. He might even be able to pick him up and throw him out of the ring. Incredibly strong, incredibly gifted. And Cormier, really, in his last few fights, he absolutely destroyed Jeff Monson and Devin Cole in unanimous decisions. He finished Bigfoot Silva in the first round by punches, and like I mentioned before, tossed around Josh Barnett to an easy unanimous decision. I think we're going to see more of the same in the Dion Staring fight. We might be able to see more of his stand-up in that fight. John Jones, looking at his career, he has fought decent wrestlers. He's fought Ryan Bader. He's fought Rashad Evans. Was able to handle them. Daniel Cormier might literally be the best wrestler signed to the UFC. He's one of the few guys who has wrestled, with Team USA, which the United States has one of the best wrestling teams in the world. Guys like a Dan Henderson, I believed, fought for the USA wrestling team as well. He easily makes the short list of best wrestlers in the UFC. Might be the only fighter John Jones would go up against who would put Jones at a disadvantage of wrestling and strength, which are two things that Jones uses pretty frequently to get an edge on people. Obviously, Jones's biggest tool in his toolbox is his reach and his kind of unorthodox way of throwing punches and elbows and kicks. He would have the big reach advantage against John Jones. Jones has an 84.5-inch reach, while Cormier is only at 71 inches. Cormier is 5'11", while Jones is 6'4". Would still have that size advantage, but would not have the wrestling and strength advantages that he has tended to rescind back to if he's being challenged. That would be a hell of a fight. If we do see Cormier versus Jon Jones, what do you think goes down?
Well, it's really, really hard to call that one, man. I mean, that's just a challenge in itself because we haven't seen Cormier fight at 205 in mixed martial arts competition. And on the same note, we haven't seen Jon Jones face a wrestler the caliber of Daniel Cormier. I think that Cormier isn't that old. I believe he's only 31. So I think he's definitely not too old. I mean, Dan Henderson, might even get a shot. So that is a pick'em fight, dude. I have no friggin' clue.
Yeah, I honestly, I still go with Jones just because Jones would be able to keep the distance and has some incredible strikes, but I really do honestly think the two biggest threats to Jon Jones right now is Daniel Cormier and the greatest of all time, Anderson Silva. I don't think anyone else really has much of a chance. So Cormier versus Jones, that would be incredibly, incredibly intriguing. Wanted to touch on that, I was talking about Dana saying Verdum might get the next title shot, but really quick, let's do our 10 solid seconds of sports. Chris only follows MMA. I follow every sport because I'm an ESPN junkie. So we keep it to 10 seconds every podcast. You ready?
Let's go.
They do it. Ray Lewis retires as one of the greatest linebackers in NFL history. NFL playoffs get underway this weekend. 7 coaches fired from their posts. Adrian Peterson falls 9 yards short of the single-season rushing record. Florida and Louisville square off tonight in the Sugar Bowl. Alabama and Notre Dame go at it next Monday in the national title. Fuck Gary Bettman. Like I mentioned, Dana White. God, Dana White, it seems like every other press conference makes a weird promise about, the winner of this fight's gonna get a title shot. Last time it was, or not last time, but the first thing that comes to mind was before UFC on Fox 4. First he's like, yeah, well, whoever puts the best show on will get the shot at Jon Jones, and Lyoto Machida puts on the best show. Then he's like, Lyoto Machida's gonna get the next shot. And then the fight versus Henderson doesn't go down. There's a lot of weird stuff happens. Just, I don't know if we necessarily can believe him or not. When Dana says Verdum is going to get the next title shot with a win over Big Nog, do you believe him?
Hell no, I don't. Why would I?
Yeah. And, talking about it, if Verdum were to get the title shot, do you think it's warranted?
I think that Verdum is definitely warranted out of all the heavyweights out there. I mean, between Overeem and Verdum's had more fights in the UFC, and if he gets past Big Nog, he hasn't had a long layoff like Overeem, so I could definitely see Verdum posing a threat to Cain Velasquez, and so yes, in short, yes.
Personally, I don't think it's warranted because it's between two guys, Fabricio Verdum and Alistair Overeem, and fortunately we saw these guys fight each other semi-recently at Strikeforce, and it was not even close. Fabricio Verdum, one of the funnier moments in Strikeforce, lying on his back, literally begging Overeem to come down and grapple with him because he couldn't pull Overeem into his guard, and Overeem wanted nothing to do with being on the ground with Fabricio Verdum. Cain versus Verdum would be pretty interesting because it's a guy who loves to fight on top versus a guy who loves to fight on bottom.
Power top.
Classic power top versus power bottom match. That would be intriguing, but just based on the fact that Overeem handed Fabricio Verdum his ass in a lunchbox, I don't think it makes much sense to give Verdum a title shot over Overeem, who hasn't lost since that fight.
Yeah, no, I see your point. I just feel that current trajectory, I feel like there's not too many guys at heavyweight right now that can truly say that they can contend for that title. So that's why I give Verdum the benefit of the doubt.
Yep. And speaking of titles, Anderson Silva, the longest reigning champion with the most title defenses. A lot of people were wondering, a year or two ago, his management was saying that he was going to ride out the rest of his contract and then retire. And great news to the mixed martial arts world. Anderson Silva, even though he's 38 years old, has signed a 10-fight contract with the UFC. Kind of surprising. It seems like something different comes out of Anderson's camp. We hear he wants to sit on the shelf for a long time, then he doesn't want to, then he wants to fight Jon Jones, then he doesn't, then he does again. So it looks like Silva, barring anything crazy going down, is going to have 10 more fights at least in the UFC. Other than Jon Jones, who obviously is his, probably has the best chance of defeating Anderson Silva, who do you think serves as the biggest challenge on the horizon for the Spider?
Whew, that is such a great question. I'm going to have to say, are we talking middleweight or are we talking any weight?
Let's stick to middleweight, because I think really, the George St. Pierre, Jon Jones fights have been talking about, but those will probably be the only reasons he would leave middleweight again. Has a little bit of work to do at middleweight as that title picture starts getting a little clogged up. So let's stick to middleweight. Which middleweight do you think poses the biggest threat?
Pretty easy, Chris Weidman.
Yeah, why is that?
I just feel that the kid is very strong, very young, comes from a great camp, and he obviously has savage finishing ability. Finishing Mark Munoz the way that he did. I haven't been sold on him when we talk about him. I kind of say, we haven't seen him with a stiff test, but I really feel that, after seeing Belcher fight Okami, he's not ready. I think Lombard needs a bigger test. I think that Costa Philippu's on the radar. Tim Boach just lost, who I thought, didn't really have much of a shot, but looked good against Okami. So the middleweight landscape is changing, and we have so many changes going on right now. I think that Michael Bisping has no shot of beating the Spider, so I'm going to have to say Chris Weidman.
I'm actually going to go with Chael Perfection Sonnen. I do think he is going to move back to middleweight after his fight against Jon Jones. And, just thinking about Chael, everyone always says, well, the first fight was close, but in that second fight, Chael got his ass handed to him. Not necessarily. I'm pretty sure Chael Sonnen won that first round, and if it wasn't for that Westland windup, anything could have happened. Chael was very unwise to throw that strike up against Anderson that set him up perfectly. That picture of Chael sitting against the cage, just sort of looking at Anderson like, oh no.
And he didn't get his fair shot. I feel that stoppage was such bullshit. We've seen guys take way more damage. Chael got hit 3 times flush, wasn't out, and the fight got called. And I don't care about intelligent defenses. For a guy who has won, how many rounds is it? 5 out of 7 rounds?
5 out of 7 rounds.
Yeah, come on, dude. He didn't get his fair fucking chance.
I do think with Anderson fighting a 10-fight deal, I have a feeling that one of those 10 fights, I think 4 of those fights I could draw up. We're probably going to see Silva versus Weidman. We're probably going to see Silva GSP. We're probably going to see Silva versus Jon Jones. And we're probably going to see Silva versus Chael Sonnen 3. And yeah, I will be tuning into all 4 of those fights, because all 4 of those fights will be entertaining as hell. And if Anderson Silva can win all 4 of those, we're looking at not only the greatest of all time, but a fighter who has such a deep history in dominating other people. I don't see how anyone could do any better, even if they come in and defend their title 15 times. Silva not only has defended his title, I think 11 times now, he has done it in spectacular fashion. Even the Sonnen fights, I would say that people say that, oh man, that first Sonnen fight was one of Anderson Silva's worst fights. Yes and no. Yes, he did get dominated for 4 rounds, but no, because that is, that would be like calling Tim Boetsch versus Yushin Okami one of Boetsch's worst fights. You have got to give a ton of credit to a comeback, and Anderson Silva locking in that triangle may have been one of the most spectacular moments in mixed martial arts history. That truly was an amazing fight, and Silva has really so far grinded out an amazing legacy in the UFC, and this 10 fight deal, it'll be something else seeing how deep he can go with it.
Yeah, good call, my friend. Good call, absolutely.
Let's go through some news briefs, then hit up a couple Dana White related topics, and then put a bow on this and send it out into the internets. Mike Goldberg actually sitting for UFC 155, replaced by John Anik. Reasons for his absence are unknown. Dana White has said that he'll be out for a while, and it's not illness related. I've seen rumors online that he's gone into rehab for pills. That's totally a rumor, though. It could be anything. Really hope whatever it is, whether it's family related, whether it's health related, whatever. We do hope the best for Mike Goldberg, because he does seem like a really nice guy and is the voice for the UFC. He, Buffer, and Rogan are 3 personalities that are really key to the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and I hope we see Goldberg back sooner rather than later. Beck Hyatt to get a title shot at Invicta 4. Joe Lauzon getting 40 stitches chronicling those pictures on the underground. Dan Henderson taking a shot at John Jones, telling fans not to drink and drive and crash into telephone poles at New Year's Eve. John Jones firing back like, oh, hey, the old man's got jokes. The UFC offers to hire Mike Dolce to get Chris Cyborg to 135 pounds. And Liz Carmouche coming out saying that the UFC is hoping she loses, which is probably pretty accurate. Dana White, obviously setting up the division that he himself has called the Rousey division. They're obviously pulling for Ronda Rousey to continue the marketability of that women's bantamweight division. And speaking of Dana White, news topic I wanted to get to. He said he's not sure if he's going to be bringing over Josh Barnett. He said he will be bringing over Nate Marquardt. What do you think of all these beefs? There definitely was a point when I was getting into the sport when seeing Dana White having all these feuds with fighters. It was entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. I would see a story and be like, oh, what, what is Dana White saying about this guy now? Oh, it's crazy. What is this guy saying about Dana White? Oh, it's wild. Now I see it and I roll my eyes. I think Dana White's an amazing president. He is a million times better than the presidents of the big 4 sports, NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL. He is way better than all those presidents, both in the way he runs the company and in the way he markets himself. I love Dana White 99% of the time. I actually tweeted him before we started the podcast, tweeted him from my personal Twitter, Jake Walters with a Z, and I asked him, dude, you're the president of a multi-billion-dollar company. Why do you waste your time going back and forth with all these knuckleheads? And his response was something to the effect of, I don't give a fuck about a title. You say stupid shit to me, I say stupid shit back. I actually think that's exactly what he said. Really funny, really kind of gregarious character. Most of the time, I enjoy what he says. He's very candid, and you've got to love that in someone in such a high-up position. But I'm just tired of hearing all these beefs with him and fighters. You hear Josh Barnett, and he is asked about it, and he is like, yeah, I haven't talked to Dana recently. I hope all that stuff's in the past, and I'm assuming I'll be in the UFC after I fight in the Strikeforce finale, and the fact that Dana says, "Oh, I'm not sure." Just I'm so tired of it, and this just all this bullshit needs to come to an end because it's bumming me out.
I agree, man. It seems really counterproductive. It's like, just cut them or, solve the issue. Don't drag it out in the media. I mean, there's probably 1,000 better things that they can be covering than, oh, Dana White says this about that guy, and then the guy responds with that. It's like, dude, you're the president, man. Show some force. If you don't like them and they don't fit your company's model, get rid of them. Plain and simple.
It just seems petty. And the last issue I wanted to get to, Dana White has a buddy, I guess, Nick the Tooth, and Nick the Tooth fought in a grappling match, which actually the little grappling part, it was entertaining, whatever. What do you think of the Nick the Tooth video blog? Or are you a fan, or do you think it's just stupid?
I thought it was funny. I mean, Dana White's a rich man. He can do whatever he wants. He's got a goofy-looking buddy with no tooth. Right now, I'm missing a tooth, so I get a kick out of it. I'm like, haha, look at this dumb idiot. So, yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, I think they could be doing much better things, but whatever, man. I mean, it's his blog. He can do whatever he wants. I enjoyed it.
Exactly, yeah. I enjoyed the first one, and I would enjoy it if he brought him around every now and then, but Nick the Tooth seemed to be like the main focus of all of his video blogs for UFC 155, wore a Nick the Tooth t-shirt at the weigh-in, which was pretty funny. I enjoy it in small doses. Just don't overdo the Nick the Tooth thing. It's almost like one of those jokes that's funny in small doses, but when you overdo it, you're like, eh. Sorry, I had to mute myself and cough there. I thought Chris would say something to save the silence, but
no, I thought there was some kind of weird joke or something.
Guess not. No, I just had to cough really bad. But yeah, you have any more topics you want to bring up and talk about on this week's episode of the MMA Podcast?
I do not, man. I have had a blast as usual.
Yeah, we do apologize for that volume issue if you were listening live to the Conor Heun interview. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We really do appreciate all the positive feedback on Twitter, on YouTube. Also, shout out, obviously, to Conor Heun coming on and spending the time with us, talking about his injury. Really went in depth with all of that. Really interesting hearing that. Shout out to, MMA Mental, as always, Word on the Street podcast. You have any shout outs, Chris?
Yeah, and don't forget our little Davey.
Our little Davey.
I'll interrupt him tomorrow, I promise.
Chris being very well known now for cutting Dave off. We usually do it run sheet style, and especially, this we don't really need an order for, but for the round table we have an order of who speaks, and Chris is well known for stepping in when it's supposed to be Dave's turn to speak. Pretty funny stuff. Check out the round table, which is tomorrow, and every Thursday, 7 to 9 Eastern, 4 to 6 Pacific. This show is live every Wednesday, 9 to 11 Eastern, 6 to 8 Pacific. You can visit us on Twitter at the MMA Podcast. Visit us at the MMApodcast.com. Once again, huge shout out to our listeners and those who call in. Conor Heun, that was a really fun interview. Yeah, future guests. Joey Diaz, I think, just recently had a kid. We're talking about getting him on. Lenny Hart, Renzo Gracie. I know I've said it for probably 6 years now. Really looking forward to having them on. Once again, thank you so much. It's you guys who keep the boat going, and we're having a fun-ass time doing it, and we're going to keep doing it until the wheels fall off. Until next week, we gone.
We gone.
Look up to the sky, hide a little smile and amusement. Never grow accustomed to losing, live and die for the love of this music. Compel a thrive when the times are the toughest and truest. Keep in mind science, silencing all these idiots caught up in all their ignorance. Two clans fighting under the same banner. We all got love for this ground game, and that's all that matters. In the balance, the teachings of the Grand Master. I'm trying to master the system, that's what I'm after. And stay true to the craft, spark trees to relax. Old school miracle, lacing the track. And I'm working the angles on me sharp and precise, man. Back in the day when I was learning to rock this mic, paying homage to the classic shit. Dilated, undisputed heavyweights repping Los Angeles. And yeah, I do this for the 213. Historical flip down, you know I'm with that G. So fire in the hole, slick with the flow. High caliber rappers is here to shatter the fucking mold.
Powerful. 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 Powerful.